Hi, it's Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO here in beautiful Montreal, welcoming you to another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. We're part of Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional community, and you can find us on Facebook. We bring you conversations about everything fractional that matters, for fractional executives and businesses from coast to coast. Think of this as your go-to spot for real talk, practical wisdom, and strategies you can actually use, all without the corporate fluff and with plenty of Canadian content. Whether you're a fractional pro or a business in our great country of Canada and beyond, this conversation is for you. Grab your espresso and let's dive in. Welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. I'm your host and fractional CMO, Robert Mendelson, here in beautiful Montreal. And joining us today from just down the street in beautiful Toronto is Patrick McCaully, who calls himself the vanquisher of vanilla PR. He is a former broadcast journalist at 3 of 4 national outlets, 25-year career of beating the odds, earning massive media, dominating coverage for clients, and creating some of the most talked about PR campaigns in history, in Canadian history. Sounds like it was written by a PR pro. We'll definitely dig into that. Today's episode is sponsored by the Fractional Pros Canada.ca directory. Scaling a business in Canada is hard enough without the high price tag of a full-time C-suite hire. Most CEOs I talk to need high-level strategy to break through, but they don't want the overhead, the long-term risk, or the 6-month recruiting cycle. When they ask for a shortcut, I send them to the Fractional Pros Canada directory, the curated hub for vetted, high-tier fractional talent, experts who step in, find the gaps, and deliver ROI from day one. Instead of digging through generic job boards, savvy leaders go where the specialists are already gathered. Business leaders, find your next strategic partner on the directory at fractionalproscanada.ca. And fractionals, if you're not listed, you're effectively invisible to the Canadian leaders who are ready to hire right now. So don't just be open for business, be findable. Head over to the fractionalproscanada.ca site and get listed today. Patrick, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So your profile is anything but vanilla. It's interesting you go with vanilla. Right. You're kind of more like I don't know, all of the ice creams wrapped into one. Your approach is more of a kicking the door down rather than whispering into the media void. You spent 8 years in newsrooms of 3 national broadcasters, Global CTV, City TV, as the person deciding which stories make it and which ones don't. Yeah. Any trigger moment at the assignment desk where you looked at a pile of bad PR pitches and realized you had to go over to the other side to show everyone how it's actually done?
Oh, I mean, I think it was 8 years of triggers. So one of the, it seems like it's, sure. I mean, it seems like it's very glamorous to be an assignment desk editor at a major, news operation, a major national news operation. But the reality is that you're sitting there usually 3 o'clock in the morning, you're really bored, kind of gravenly hoping that something disastrous will happen or blow up or there'll be a fire or something you can send a camera to. And intermittently, you get sent all of these really, really bad pitches by big agencies that are, they're just like, hey, tell me what's interesting about your, they talk to their clients, they say, tell me what's interesting about what you do, and let's send out a press release and see what happens. And they aren't really newsworthy. They're kind of self-serving and really, really very vanilla. So at some point, it occurred to me that I could see the daylight, have more of a life, make more money, and probably have more influence over the news as a PR person than the guy sitting at the desk taking the bad pitches. So it was, I guess I had an epiphanal moment. Yes.
And now you get more sleep too.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. In conventional hours.
I worked in radio in my early days, and I was never a news reader, but I saw the news readers. And when I was working at a small, now defunct AM station in Cobourg, Ontario, not too far from Toronto, early 90s, it was, I watched the news readers, the news announcers. It was rip and read. They'd have, the BN broadcast news feed coming off the printer every so often. They'd rip it and pretty much just go on air and read it. There wasn't a lot of manipulation or, dare I say, thought going into it. When I took did my communications bachelor's at Concordia University here in Montreal, I took a radio journalism course, and what we were taught by the now late but great Bob McDevitt, who worked at CBC, was a very, a really good way to approach the news, put thought into it, present balanced stories, etc. But the funny thing is that as soon as I got into the real world of radio and saw how things really worked, I saw that actually none of that was happening. Right. There was no thought going into it. It was a rip and read, and it was just, always on deadline, pressure, 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 and no time for that great theoretical way of processing news and data. So it's one thing in theory, another thing in reality. You spent a lot of time pulling wire copy. I think you were fetching coffee in the early days.
For Lloyd Robertson at CTV, who was very nice to me, by the way. But yeah, fetching coffee and a lot of bowing and scraping as an editorial assistant in a national newsroom. But you can learn a lot if you're not dangerous, and you can see how things really work and understand how they really work. And I just don't think I could do what I do today as well as I do it had I not had all of that newsroom experience. And I think a lot of PR people don't have newsroom experience. They went to PR school and they're kind of afraid of the media. Like they think that they're smarter than they are, and you can't use humor, or you can't like put your opinion across in things. And that's not good, because the media, the least media in history is generating the most content, and they need PR people. Like if you ask a media person, they'll never admit that. They'll never tell you, oh yeah, we get a lot of our stuff from PR people. We need PR people to get us sources very quickly. We need PR people to get us, give us constant flow of interesting stories that we can do quickly, because we only have, hours to do it and multiple platforms to put it on. But the reality is, like if you're thinking like a journalist and you're sending them something that's legitimately newsworthy and interesting, then they're going to use that. They're going to appreciate it. Probably never talk to you as a PR person, which is great. And they just post the story or put it together. So,
it's kind of like the dirty little secret that most business leaders, I think, don't realize, is that there are just so many, journalists just waiting for, or always struggling, trying to find a good story, right? There's tons of stories. You can write about anything, anytime. The weather is always interesting. But to get something that's engaging and juicy and controversial, which of course there's no lack of these days, but to get on their radar, that's what it takes. And like you were talking about, it's almost like, they're afraid they're gonna have to fill the void with like the 2 a.m. infomercials that air, simply because the networks have nothing else to put on. So they put on, infomercials, which have very, very low engagement and, are not doing much pressure for the network. But so it's enormous pressure. So what's the secret for, business leaders who don't realize that there's just an opportunity waiting to be taken? How do you coach? How do you, tell executives, CEOs that you're working with to what are the steps to go and seize that moment?
I mean, I'm probably legendarily blunt with people, and it's kind of a truth to power thing. So I'm not the guy that you hire if you're looking for someone to say that you're great and your robust system of financial analysis tools is world class, because no one cares. It's about the idea, right? So one of the big problems with PR, in my opinion, is that it's sold on connections. Like, I know a guy at the National Post. I know this guy at the Globe and Mail. And that's great. And like, I think people probably open my emails because I've been doing it for 25 years and I have, a pretty good reputation, but they don't do it because they like me. They don't do a story because they like me. They do a story because it's the best story of the day. Like, it really is the last meritocracy in the world. You have to have the best idea on the day and be able to pivot if it's not, or if someone's done something similar, or if Trump does anything, you have to be able to, find something else. So there's a lot of truth telling in what I consider to be ethical PR. And you have to tell people all the time. And I certainly do that, I'm sorry, but it's very important to you. You have no objective way of knowing this as someone who runs a company, because it's very personal for you. You think it's like the most incredible thing that's ever happened that you got an update on your software platform, but the media doesn't care, So you got to go bigger, you got to go bold. This is not the time to pull punches, because the world is melting, and you got like Strait of Hormuz stuff happening, and like, Ford is a disaster, stuff is happening there. So you really need to do something that's bold and different and creative. That's where I think a lot of PR fails, is not thinking about what the story is first and then working back to, it being relevant to their clients. So quick example, I had a guy who was a financial planner for 30 years, calls me up and he says, "Hey, I've been a financial planner for 30 years. I did a self-published book about being a financial planner. This is the great time for me to get media publicity because I have a book now." And I was like, "Look, man, I'm sure it's great. I'm sure you're a great financial planner, but no one cares. That's completely self-serving."
I'm feeling the excitement. You're talking about somebody with a 30-year career in financial planning. They've written a book about it. I'm at the edge of my seat. I just want to know more.
Yeah, exactly. So like to him, it's
no offense to financial planners.
Yeah,
Yeah, by the way.
And I will say that category, no one ever says anything interesting. So it's a challenge and an opportunity, right? So I said, "Listen, respectfully, you're not going to get any media coverage for your book that's self-published that you're paying for, but why don't we do something that's humor-based?" So instead, we did a survey to 1,000 Canadians, an online survey, and we asked them if they were invested in things that don't exist. So do you have DSP 2016 and forward yield disbursement funds and, white chip stocks, things that sound real but don't exist? And like 43% of Canadians said, "Oh yeah, I got all kinds of DSP 2016. And it ended up being like the front page of the Globe and Mail business section, because these guys are bored, that write about financial planning and stuff like that. They're looking for something funny and interesting. And you can do that. You can, humor's a massively underused tool to get media coverage.
There's a local insurance broker here in Montreal who has ads going on the local AM station, and they use the humor completely. Their tagline is, "Buying insurance sucks. We make it suck less."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Yeah, that's got my attention.
The same reason that it works in advertising and it works in PR, but I think a lot of PR practitioners are scared to use it because it has to be super serious all the time, and they do the vanilla thing. They do the thing that they learned in PR school. I mean, I didn't go to PR school. I went to journalism school, so I think that in itself is an advantage. But you can't pull punches. You got to do something different, and the only thing that matters is how good the idea is. So I always tell clients, when they're inevitably comparing different agencies, like, hire the person that has the best idea. Like, if someone has a better idea than I do, it's probably not going to happen. But if it does, hire that guy, because the only thing that matters is how good the idea is, and it's not about connections.
Where's that fine line, though, with using humor these days? Because it's become murkier waters than ever to use humor. There's so many lines you have to make sure you don't cross, because you don't want to offend people. On the other hand, sometimes you kind of want to offend people a little bit because it gets their attention. How do you figure out where that line is for a particular client as far as using humor and not going too far?
I mean, honestly, I want to go to the wall every time, and it's a push and pull. I will tell the client, I really think this will work. Sometimes it's an extreme thing. Sometimes it's in the middle. But they kind of have their own concerns. They have their own, limits to what they're going to do. But it should feel a little uncomfortable if it's a good pitch, because you're doing something that's bold and creative and different, right? So, like, I recently did a survey for a small business company, and we were gonna talk about the CRA, like, how much of a pain in the ass is a CRA? Is it ruining small business in Canada? What's the worst things about the CRA? So it was one of maybe 5 of the questions in the survey of 25 questions were about the CRA, and ultimately they were like, "Yeah, we don't want to do the CRA thing. We don't want to do that." So we ended up going in a different direction. We ended up talking about fake triotics. which is a word that I didn't create, unfortunately, but I think I'm maybe the first person in Canada to do a big campaign with it, meaning that you say that you're buying Canadian, but you go to Walmart to save money as a consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So that ended up being the what we hinged it on, and you can build in a couple of different angles to a survey in order to get coverage. But yeah, I mean, I always want to. I feel like it's my job to push clients as far as they will go to do something that's newsworthy and that I know is going to work, and we kind of push and pull and come up with something in the middle most of the time.
Is there such a thing as bad PR? If something
Oh
goes
yeah.
sideways, backfires, is that actually a good
Well,
thing or is it a bad thing?
ask the guy from the Coldplay concert with his girlfriend. I mean, that's bad PR, and they handled that really badly, by the way, like legendarily badly. Like, gee, instead of like letting this peter out, let's fire the person that bought the tickets immediately because it's her fault, and let's hire Gwyneth Paltrow to talk about the company, because that won't like keep the story going. You know what I mean? Like you want to suck the oxygen out of a scandal. You don't want to like hire someone incredibly famous to keep it going. So like all of their moves on that were bad.
Kind
That's
of
a
a
great example.
diversion strategy.
Well, I mean, a lot of the time it's like the world being what it is. Like wait 24 hours and something horrible will probably happen in the Strait of Hormuz, or Trump, or Trump will pretend to be Jesus or something in a tweet, and that'll go away. So it's very hard to convince people when they feel like their reputation is on the line not to do something, but a lot of the time not engaging on it is probably the right thing to do. Unless somebody's injured, unless somebody's died, unless it's not going to go away. But that story would have gone away if they had just taken the heat for a couple of more days, And I think they even launched it on a weekend, that whole Gwyneth Paltrow thing. So just incredibly bad from beginning to end handling of a crisis.
Let's talk about AI and
Mm.
how that is changing the whole landscape. You talk about seismic shift in PR right now,
Yeah.
where AI searches cite 82% of earned media coverage to identify companies and searches. Talk to
Mm-hmm.
us about
Mm-hmm.
that.
So this is massive. This is, I mean, there's always been all of the important reasons for PR: credibility, third-party credibility, being able to push it out on your social media, being able to put it on your website, as seen on global TV or the Globe and Mail or whatever. But this new wrinkle where, everyone is doing AI search to find companies and products and services now. And I mean, there's a lot of evidence to support this. Like Gartner is saying that budgets are going to double for PR by 2027. I'm looking forward to that. And other people are saying like it's going to be 25% of search is going to be taken away from traditional Google search to AI by 2026, and like that's the direction we're moving in. And like let's be honest, it's the lazy way to get a lot of information quickly. So of course everyone's going to use AI to find PR companies, to find fractional CMOs, to do that. So rankings are very important. You want to be on things like Clutch, and you want to be have a lot of awards, so that you can cite those. But yeah, 82% is earned media. So not only do you need to get a lot of earned media and like, a lot of brand awareness, a lot of different hits, but you need to do it on a very frequent basis in order to come up in those searches. And the rules are kind of changing every day. Like there's some interesting loopholes. I mean, I can tell you that like right now, if you wrote a press release, Point Man News Creation is amazing, says Point Man News Creation, and here's all the reasons we're great. And I actually did this myself a couple of months ago for an award that we got. That actually, it's not going to count as much as earned media, but if you send that out over one of the inexpensive wire services like iNewsWire, EIN Newswire, it's like $200 American or something, that does count in your AI search. So that's a great kind of free tip loophole that's currently exists, but I don't think will exist forever, because AI is very serious about determining what's earned media versus paid. And that's why you need that earned media. So it's kind of like this renaissance of PR. Like it's never been more relevant. But I think, unfortunately, in my experience, that a lot of marketers and CMOs have not picked up on this yet. They're still doing Google type advertising, but it's such a huge advantage to get over your competitors, to be seen on AI and get those inbound requests from it, that it's insane not to double down on earned media and rankings and everything else to make sure that you're in those AI searches, or like you essentially don't exist. You're not going to be seen.
So interesting strategy. So basically buy your way into the AI indexing, which AI has not figured out if you're doing that or
well,
not.
Well, I mean, it's not going to be as impactful as like an earned media story in the Globe and Mail or National Post or broadcast or whatever, but it does, move the needle a little bit. And I feel like that's a loophole that's going to get closed any day. The other thing is AIs look at things differently, right? Like Claude apparently is more interested in like local media to a certain extent. So that trade media and like local media, like if you're in BC, like the business in Vancouver and stuff, Claude is really interested in that stuff, ranks it higher than even some of the national publications. So, it's a fascinating, ever-changing thing. But bottom line is, like, double down on PR, because, if you don't, your competition will, and they'll blow you out of the water.
It's so hard to keep track of all the things a company needs to do these days to get that earned media, to get those organic rankings, whether it's in traditional SEO Google, whether now it's in the search engines, rather the AI search engines. So, hey, ChatGPT, tell me, where I can find, this great thing to buy locally, et cetera, et cetera. And then, as you said, there's different strategies for each LLM because they all have their own different focus. So it's a wide net that needs to be cast, and it's not easy to figure out where to cast it. And like you said, we're recording this April 15th, 2026, just for reference purposes. So whenever you're listening to this, you may hear some things that are absolutely no longer relevant.
It's very true. It's very true. It's really hard to keep on top of. Yeah.
It's super hard. So all that being said, if I'm a fractional today, or I'm a business leader today, what should I be doing to try to rein all this in, make some sense of it? What should my next action steps be?
Well, I mean, so my analogy for this is, it's like if you could go back in time and get a search word for very little money, before SEO became such a big thing and search words were thousands of dollars, right? Such a massive advantage. But you really need to hire someone who can get you earned media PR, not just 5 hits or 3 hits or 10 hits. You need like the 50 hits, 75 hits. So do things in PR that are both newsworthy, interesting, not pulling punches, but also kind of populist to a certain extent. And I'm using that in not a bad way, but like, I did something for a guy who was a procurement person, not a very exciting thing to talk about at all. But we did a survey to Canadians on, and this is back in October when it was sort of hypothetical. What would happen if the U.S. invaded Canada? Would we be able to scale up our military quickly enough? And what are the procurement paralysis things that could happen there? Sort of coined that term. And very hypothetical in October, not so hypothetical in January when we ended up launching it. That was the week that the government of Canada admitted they had an U.S. repelling plan just in case it happened. So we got a ton of media coverage with it. But that's taking something very B2B and not very interesting and making it something that everyone can talk about. So like we got coverage on local radio station morning shows. Like, hey, what do you think about if the U.S. invaded Canada? How would we do? What are the what are the major borders that would be a problem? How much money would we need to defend ourselves, or even, not just be gone in a week, So I mean, it's look at trying to take really big concepts that can be not just talked about in trade media and in business media, but like in the morning show chatter and everywhere that you can, right? Like I'm a big, I think a lot of PR is done like very scalpel, like let's pitch 10 people to specifically write about this thing, but they can all say no. And then it's like, thank you for the bag of money, but we didn't get any media coverage. I'd rather pitch, 4,000 media, make it a broad enough concept that it would be of interest to a broad audience. And just the math of it makes a lot more sense to me.
So when somebody's doing improv, one of the principles to keep things interesting is exaggerate, right? Make things exaggerated. It's always funnier, more interesting, more creative, and just go crazy, go all the way to the outer limits. Is that a strategy that's also good when a company is getting together and trying to brainstorm how can we get the attention of the media, of the news? Something like, I think kind of like what happens if the US invades us. Now, at some point, it didn't seem like that was so exaggerated anymore as much as it would have been if we talked about that. It maybe got
very relevant very quickly.
But that's still somewhat exaggerated going out to the limits. So is that a good strategy to get, a few people in the room and say, all right, let's think crazy stuff and see what comes out of this?
Yeah. I mean, let's blue sky. I would say 98% of the time I come to them with the idea, but I mean, it doesn't matter where it comes from as long as it's the best idea. Right. So, I mean, you can't pull punches. You got to do something that's going to stand out and be interesting, because you're competing with everything going on with the world right now, which is insane. And everyone else who does what you do is also trying to get media coverage. And I mean, you really don't want to, do stuff around holidays. It seems counterintuitive, but oh gee, let's do something around Valentine's Day that relates back to us. Well, great, because it feels like you're relevant somehow, but at the same time, it's like the Super Bowl on Valentine's Day for companies. Everybody's trying to get media coverage, so why would you not just compete? Choose not to compete and release your news on your own schedule because it's legitimately news worthy and it's your own data and your own information, right? So a lot of people miss that bus, or they think that it's going to be better if they do it around a holiday, and there's like a million made up PR holidays, international mom pet day, and there's a million of them.
Right. There's an international day of something every day, usually multiple at a time. I'm not even going to bother go and look it up. I'm sure there's multiple things going on today.
Thousands of them. Yeah.
What a counterintuitive campaign. Let's take Valentine's Day as an example. If I go and I put out a paid ad and say, it's Valentine's Day, we're not advertising today, happy Valentine's Day, and just show the logo of your company, would that be effective, breaking through the clutter because it's so counter to what you expect?
Maybe. I mean, that's a legit tactic, like to do a full page ad or do like an outdoor ad or something in some kind of a funny way. Like there's a company called Pink Cherry that is adult toys, if you know where I'm going with that. And they've done some really great, both advertising and media generation of stories with stuff like that. Like I think the first one that they did said something like "scream your own name," and it was for an adult toy. And it's like they had a huge billboard saying that in a conservative town, and like, hey, that's brilliant. That is going to get attention, and they also do like based on sales of stuff, like what's the sexiest town in Canada. So like who's buying the most adult toys denotes who's the sexiest. I think they probably do it on Valentine's Day, but that's such a good pitch that works, right? I've done pitches on Valentine's Day that have been successful. I mean, I did one with strangely enough, a mortgage company. And it was, would people rather have love or pay their mortgage? Like, would you rather celebrate Valentine's Day with someone you love or make a mortgage payment? And like more than 50% of Canadians said they'd rather make a mortgage payment. So it's funny, it's timely, it's interesting. Given the choice, I'd always rather not compete with everyone else in the world for Valentine's Day stories, but in that case, it was pretty successful.
What's the secret to newsjacking? So a news story comes out, it's a big story, getting a lot of attention. How do you piggyback onto that trending news story to get some PR yourself?
Yeah, I mean, so my feeling on that is it's kind of like ambulance chasing, because again, everybody's going to be trying to get in on that story. You know, there's some famous insurance thing doesn't pay out. Everyone's going to comment on that in the insurance industry. Um, I just don't like competing unnecessarily with every other PR agency in the country. But if you're going to newsjack and it makes sense, you got to be first. People overestimate their connection with the media. They're like, oh, well, you know, Sean O'Shea at Global TV did a story with me a year ago and he's going to remember me. Like, no, he's not. He's moved on. He's doing like 3 or 4 stories a day, you know, for different platforms and mediums. And he's a great journalist and a good guy, but he's probably not going to remember you. You know, when I worked at Global TV, we had our experts list was like a duotang of pasted together, badly scribbled out notes in a book. And it wasn't, I mean, I'm sure that there's something more digital now, but still, it just illustrates the point. Like the who's going to get the newsjacking story? The first person that contacts them and gets their spokesperson right in their face and effectively grabs that. Now, that's very hard to do. You have to be on retainer with someone, not doing project work, and you have to get a very, very quick yes to go ahead with it from the client. The other thing is to say something really different. You know, don't say what everyone else is saying. Have a different opinion. So if you're the contrarian position on things, then you probably have a better chance of getting to be part of the story.
Thank you for using the word duotang. I've not heard that word in, I think, 30 odd years.
Yeah, I'm dating myself there. And
for those listeners who are too young to know what that is, go look it up. It's,
yes, in the late 1900s, we had duotangs for school. Yeah.
Used to have to go buy several dozen duotangs at the beginning of every school year. It was on the shopping list.
It was very exciting to get your new duotangs for the season.
Yeah, with a pack of lined paper with holes in it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Wow. Okay, what a throwback.
That's
so if I'm a founder of a company, or maybe I'm a company that's been rolling for a few years but has never really done anything PR wise, what's the first kind of action that the company should be looking at taking to stop being invisible and get on the PR radar?
I mean, I think that there's this notion that you have to be Microsoft to get media coverage, and it's absolutely the opposite. I mean, you, as someone who has not gotten media coverage that is not generally known by the public, you've got nothing to lose. So I would always rather work with the number 3, 4, or 5 person in the industry than the number 1, because the number 1's got reputation and they're probably going to be very conservative about what they're doing, and they really do have a lot to lose, right? The other guys, they just want to get on the radar. They want to take it away from the big guy and get their product known. So, you know, what a great opportunity to do something bold and different and challenging. You know, I think it's letting go of the notion that you are owed something by the media. I mean, I see this a lot with founders and companies. Like they think that because they exist and they employ people, the media owes them a story. And it's just absolutely not true. Like the media owes you nothing. You need to come to them with something that validates why they should do a story. It needs to be newsworthy. It needs to be interesting, timely, topical. And like, if anything, they're doing you a favor. So you have to look at it that way. through the eyes of the bored journalist, the poor assignment editor that's there at 3:00 in the morning looking for something interesting to pass on to the day shift. And so, yeah, I mean, I think if you are not the leader in your category, it is such an opportunity to do something completely different. Use humor, use fear, missing out, the FOMO, and you can do really, inexpensively. You can do a survey to 1,000 Canadians for like, maybe $1,400 US, and get a ton of media coverage. If you do it right and it's interesting, and you're, there's a million tricks, psychological tricks that get stuff noticed, like alliteration is the key to the universe. People say math is the key to the universe. I really think alliteration is the key to the universe. So, mortgage malaise did that one. That won an international award, got a ton of media coverage. Procurement paralysis, like stuff like that. Media people love words. So if you do something that's clever, they'll probably just use one. I have to say, one of the most wonderful things about being a PR person is when you write something in a press release pitch and those words get picked up, or that exact thing gets picked up across like 100 different publications. And it's like you've given birth to this idea like mortgage malaise, and then it ends up being everywhere. It's like, oh, of course, it's mortgage malaise. Like we've always had that word and talked about that, So there's so many things that you can do to make something interesting and get media coverage. And I just there's a shocking lack of creativity, I think, in the approach of most PR agencies.
So Patrick, you ready to do some live workshopping here?
Sure. Yeah. What do you got?
All right. So Fractional Pros Canada, right? We're a community of over 1,400 fractionals across Canada, and we want to get more attention from the Canadian business community to let them know that we exist, to let them know what fractionals are, to let them know there's a fractional option when they don't have the money to hire a full C-suite, or when they've cut their C-suite because of the current economic times and uncertainty. So let's workshop this. What are some ideas that Fractional Pros Canada can do to get more awareness, more in the face of the Canadian business community? 1, 2, 3, go.
So, yeah. Okay. So, you need to, well, it's not like I don't do this every single day with every client that I talk to. Yeah. So, I mean, you need to lean into the pain points of the companies with CMOs and fractional people, right? So what is the end audience that you're trying to get to is the businesses that are going to be hiring fractional CMOs. So talk about what a full-time CMO, what are the issues there? What are the biggest problems? What are the biggest concerns? And I think that there's an opportunity there for humor. Like what are the things that drive a CEO crazy about a CMO in a traditional role when they're paying them, a salary? So you could look at, just the staleness of that relationship, right? Because a fractional CMO has to prove themselves every project, right? They have to be very proactive, really tell them how it is, really deliver all the time. Or it's not as hard to get rid of them as it is someone who's a salaried employee, right? So I think there's a lot in there that you could work with, and you could use humor and you'd want to go out to your specific audience of the 1,400 fractional CMOs, get as many to fill out a survey as possible, maybe do like 25 questions. And then the big thing is to be able to look at different parts of the country and compare them. So like, what do fractional CMOs in Vancouver think versus fractional CMOs in Alberta and Ontario? So there's a lot of ways to sort of parse that information and make it interesting. Or you could just go to like a platform like Polefish, which is what I use a lot, and ask 1,000 entrepreneurs or CEOs or founders what their biggest problems are. But the brilliance is in the details. Doesn't sound really exciting yet, but it's what are those questions going to be? what can you identify as pain points and what's interesting? So like I did with the digital marketing agency and fake triotics and questions about the CRA and like, what's the biggest pain point for small businesses, like not getting paid on time or getting ghosted? Those are the kind of questions that you want to ask to like build a really interesting pitch to get that media traction and be seen as representing that group in a really proactive way.
So just to be clear, Fractional Pros Canada, not just fractional CMOs, all kinds of fractionals, right? We have,
sure.
You name it,
sure.
You name the fractional combination title, we got it. Just to be clear on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah,
I think there's some definitely some things in there that you could do, but I wouldn't do it straight. I would try to make it as funny or shocking as possible.
So let's walk through this. So we put that together. We come up with some creative, funny ideas that would resonate with business owners. And then what do we do with that? So we've got this, and now we have a good idea. We got a good campaign. We've kind of got the content, but what do we do next with it?
So you take that content and you look for the anomalies and the interesting things, and like it all of these details matter, right? Like how you ask the question, what the options are, if you allow it to be a multiple choice question, if you allow an other category. Sometimes it's great to have other because you get like oddball stuff from the other that you didn't anticipate, but is really funny. And sometimes you don't want to do other because you want a stronger number of definitive, like we think option A over option B. You take that information. It's easier to do it over something like Polefish because it really breaks it down in a way that you can quickly analyze it and look at like, age ranges and income ranges and geography and sort of see what those differences are. But you would take that information and turn it into as interesting a press release pitch as possible. Now, everyone can Google right now, is the press release dead? And I'm sure that there's some like vanilla, uninformed person that will say, yeah, the press release is dead and it's not what the media wants. That isn't true. And like, I'll stop doing it when it stops working because the media responds to a press release if it's written in the right way and you use all of these, 25 years of psychological things to make it work. And as I said, a lot of the time now, they'll take the press release and the information from it and never talk to you and just publish a story online or, they'll do a TV story or whatever. So you put it in that, really good press format, press release, you send it out now. And again, this is a difference with me versus most PR people is, they want to do like, let's pitch 10 people that only write about that specific topic. But I want to pitch as many people as possible. So I want to make it as broad a concept as possible. And I want to send it to like business journalists, workplace journalists, people who write about retirement, because maybe there's some people that are fractionals now because they've retired from an agency. I mean, the other stuff is it's just interesting, the rise of the fractional movement, right? But that story's been covered extensively. But if you can find ways to make it more interesting, then I think that's somewhere to go with it as well. And then like the mechanics of it, you would send it out to a very large media list with a clever email subject line and a clever headline for it. And then it's just me following up with people. I tend to do like 3 follow-ups, sort of personalized email with like different aspects of those 25 questions. So you want to bake in a couple of different directions that you can go in with it. And then it's, time pressure, tracking coverage, going in different directions and pivoting if you have to. Like always have a plan B and a plan C. Sorry, go ahead.
I say one of the ideal things, one of the, I think, holy grails of PR is to get on that expert list that
Yeah.
that every reporter, every journalist has in their Rolodex. There's another throwback word, Rolodex.
Yeah, the
File that
Rolodex.
one with
Yeah.
duotang.
Yes.
So let's take me as an example. So I'm the founder, I'm the leader of this 1,400, fractional executive network across Canada. How do I get myself to be that person that a journalist is going to call if they're
Mhm.
doing a story on fractionals, or they want to get the viewpoint of fractionals about a story in the news or something like that? What's the secret to becoming that expert that is going to
Mhm.
get the phone call?
Make it as easy as possible to find you and be available 100% of the time. Drop everything anytime any journalist calls from anywhere. And, um, I think it's repetition and getting a lot of media coverage and repeating that. So, be out with something ideally every 4 to 6 weeks, realistically every 8 weeks, be out with a pitch, something in the fractional sphere that's new and exciting and interesting, and be constantly visible. And then you get because believe me, journalists are doing AI searches too for guests now or experts, because they quickly need to find somebody. Have a newsroom section on your website so that every time that you've done an interview, they can see that, because it communicates that you're a good guest, and that you can string a sentence together, and that you're good for these types of stories. You wouldn't want to put that in your pitch to the media, because that just pisses them off. Oh, well, you already talked to my competitor TV station or radio station. Why would I talk to you now? But if it's in a newsroom that's kind of inert and just things that you have done, then it serves to show that you're an expert, you know? So it's being constantly top of mind by getting regular media coverage and being super available. Again, founders and CEOs really overestimate how much of a love connection they've made with media people, because they call you, they interview you, and then they move on, man. They're on to the next story. And one day it's fractional professionals. The next day it's like a by-election in Thurso, Quebec. So they're not worried about maintaining a relationship. So it's getting media coverage and getting it on a regular basis. And certainly the AI search is also a big part of that now.
It's I'm hearing a lot of similarities to dating. It's going on a lot of dates that don't really go
Yeah.
anywhere.
I mean that's true, and there are exceptions. I mean, that the guy was talking about, the financial planner. They loved the story so much at 680 News that it really positioned him as like a consumer advocate, because we don't know what we're invested in and we should ask more questions. And they gave him a regular gig commenting on markets, because he had a different voice and he said something differently. And that's huge. That's like every time there's a big sell off or something interesting happens in the markets, he gets a call, and they syndicate across all of those 680 News, 660 News in Alberta radio stations. So it happens where they love you, and they'll keep talking to you, but not very often. And you have to constantly remind them that you're out there, and that you have something different to say, and that you're worth interviewing.
Every company, every business, every Fractional Pros Canada leader wants free PR. What's the secret
Sure.
to getting free PR? Everybody wants free PR.
Well, I mean, I completely biased opinion. Is it impossible for you to do your own sending something out and getting traction with it? No. And anyone can get lucky once with, sending out a pitch, and the heavens align, and, that works out for you. And great. Like, why not try to do that? I think earlier in my career, I was of the stance that if you sent out your own press release that wasn't really professional and was more grassroots, and it didn't have all the things that it should in it, and it wasn't done the right way, that like the media was going to remember and it would just like torch your future ability to get media coverage. And like the truth is, they just don't. They move on and they've forgotten about you and they don't remember, unless it's a really bad experience. They will remember if you if they're trying to do something with you and you don't come through, or you are difficult about, you know, getting dropping everything and doing an interview. And they will remember if you are a pain in the ass and do stupid things like ask for a copy of the story, like your duplication service, or can I see that before it goes to air, or I meant that to be off the record. Those are things in Aaron Sorkin shows that don't really exist. Like, unless you're very implicitly agreed to verbally and legally to off the record, assume that everything is on the record, you know? So I think there isn't a whole lot of harm in trying something like that. But then the big question is, and the reason that you need PR professionals is, what do you do next? Everyone can get one successful pitch maybe when the company is new and the heavens align, but like, what do you keep doing to get media coverage, which you so essentially need on an ongoing basis? And that's where you need a professional.
Strategies. It's kind of like I say, you know, I help companies, you know, go from doing random acts of marketing to putting together a marketing strategy. So similar thing, stop doing random acts of PR and get a PR strategy in there.
Yeah. I mean, and at the same time, you have to try things to see what works. And I mean, I say this a lot, in that, you know, PR is one of those unique things where you can do everything right. You can have a great pitch, you can execute it very well, you can send it to the right people, and it can still not get picked up because of something that happens in the world, because of someone doing something similar at the same time, which you can't possibly foresee or plan for. There's a million reasons that something cannot work, right? And I mean, that's just the reality. It's not paid. The media doesn't owe you anything. So there is always that possibility. But you got to make sure that you hire somebody who is willing to do a plan B, has a lot of ideas, and can demonstrate that they will go in a different direction to get the media coverage that you need.
I remember back in the day, it was believed, I think it was partially true at least, that one of the great ways to get on the radar of a journalist is to invite them out to lunch, because every journalist was stereotypically poor, loved free food, and it was a great way to get on their good side. And even way further back in the day, you know, go invite the journalist to the bar and grab a drink. I mean, there was notorious stories of if an important story was breaking, somebody would go across the street from the newsroom to the local bar where it was just, you know, that's where all the journalists were hanging out. Like, hey guys,
those days are gone, man. I mean, I had a press pass for 8 years, and man, I went to some really great holiday parties and I had some really great dinners. The Rosewater Supper Club, a lot of the time, open bar at the Rosewater Supper Club, you know, the high-end scotch, like thank you, national PR, you know. But those days are long, long gone. And, you know, if you have like a really amazing event, maybe you can get, and I'm very wary of events. We should come back to that. If you have something really unbelievable, sure. But like, I had a boss years and years and years and years ago that would invite sort of more freelance journalists, and they would do like a box at a Blue Jays game or at a Raptors game or something like that. And I mean, I don't feel like that's really a PR strategy. That's like I'm going to take you out for, you know, to go see a game and eat hot dogs, and maybe you'll write a story if you can convince your editor to do it. You know, that's not the way to do things. And I had I mean, a long time ago, but I had a client who basically said, like, look, I think you're doing this wrong because you're not taking journalists out to dinner. And I'm like, dude, it's not 1965. Like, that's not the way that this works. And you know, not only do they not want to go out to dinner with you, they don't want to take a phone call. Like, I'm proud to say, I haven't called a journalist for probably 15 years that didn't call me first that I wasn't calling back. Because my strategy is to do something interesting enough that they want to do the story or they want to talk to you. This whole, like, I'm going to phone up journalists and beg them to do a story is just awful. I hated it when I was at Global. You're on the assignment desk, you're sending a camera to a fire, you're telling the Global chopper where to land. You got a lot going on. And then like some like 23-year-old junior person from a big agency calls up and they're like, hey, you know, I know you're probably not interested in this, but my boss is making me call you. So can I just
Great so opener.
so many times. Can I just like get this crossed off my list? And can I pitch you on like this new, like, you know, ear protection device? And it's like, I don't care. And you don't care. So why are you calling me? You know? So, I mean, the notion of like calling a journalist, and I know some people do it and they do it successfully and, you know, good for them. That just to me is madness, you know?
Yeah, that reminds me of, you know, walking along the street and there's somebody being paid to hand out flyers and they're like, here, take 10 of them because I need to show that I've given them all out.
Yeah, I want to go home. It's cold outside.
That's right.
Take 10 of these.
You mentioned events. So events, good, bad, or good if they're done in the right way?
In my experience, an event is very precarious in this world, in this time, because you have a lack of resources and you have, you know, things can go south very quickly. Like, you know, I did one years famously. We did 10 cents a liter gas for flightnetwork.com. And that was crazy. That was, I think we got 300 media hits in 4 hours. There was satellite trucks there. There was helicopters. We had riot police just in case things got crazy. And I might have implied in the pitch that they might get crazy. And that was just an absolute spectacle that was very, very hard to ignore for everyone. But like a standard event where you're like releasing a product or you're going to do a speech on something, or, you know, unless it's something that's really great breaking news, that's a lot of risk. That's a lot of eggs to put in one basket. I would 100% of the time rather have, you know, something that's like a survey that we have our own data from, because then I can pitch it over a 2-week or a 3-week period to get as much media coverage as possible. The event is hit or miss. Like, unless it's something really big, really exciting, that is blowing the world away, then there's a really good possibility no one's going to come. And then everyone loses.
Patrick, let's wrap it up with the question that we ask last to all of our guests here, which is, if you could put any one message on a billboard that millions of fractionals and business leaders would see every day as they drive by it on the highway of life, what would that one message be?
The best idea wins.
The best idea wins.
Yeah. Because that's all that matters in PR, is having the best idea.
All right. I like that. It's a good note to end on, which applies not just, I think, in business, but in life in general. The best idea wins.
Yeah.
You know, put some thought into it, figure out what is it that's going to win the day or win
and
the
fight
moment.
about it, argue about it, you know, make it passionate.
Argue with your AI about it.
Absolutely. Well, with whoever will argue with you about it, have an argument to get the best result.
All right. Awesome. Patrick, thank you so much for sharing about PR, about your journey, and giving us some wisdom here on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
My pleasure.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. If you're a fractional professional based in Canada, we'd love to have you join us in the Fractional Pros Canada Facebook group, the home for Canada's fractional community. It's where Canadian fractional executives connect, share insights, and help each other succeed. Until next time, I'm Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO. May your impact be full-time, even if your hours are fractional.